talk today is about noticing, and specifically noticing the gap. Noticing is simply what it says on the tin. It's the act of becoming conscious of how bits of language work. Noticing the gap is becoming conscious of the difference between how you might express a certain meaning and how higher level speakers may say it, or how to say it in a more natural way. Hopefully, obviously, all activities that we do in class will result in some sort of noticing. But today I'll run through a few activities which can help learners really see and notice gaps in their own knowledge, and therefore motivate them to fill the gap with the new language, and then avoid the gap next time they use that language or express that meaning. So the activities today, they're not new. And like I said before, I've banged on about them for many years. At this very event, in fact, back when we used to do it face-to-face in London. But I hope that some of it will be useful to revisit, and for any of you for whom they are new, well, I think you're in for a treat. Okay, so here are the bare bones of the activities that we're looking at today. So first, we establish meaning. The learners need to understand what the text means as a vehicle for information about the real world. We can do that either through some sort of comprehension activity or even using their first language. Then we take the text away and the learners re-express that meaning. And they add their own, they take the kernel of meaning that they've retained, and they add the fruit, the flesh of their own form. And then we give them back the original, they compare, see what's the same, see what's different. And then as teachers, we might expand on that process and fill the gap with some language. All right, so the first activity is a great one to start a class. If your lead-in involves discussion, which many times it does, beginning of a class, you might get the students to discuss some questions. You can do this without any preparation at all. So here we go. I'm not going to be able to demonstrate all of the activities today, but we will actually do this one. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and I'd like you just to write down, sorry, not in the chat. I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and I'd just like you to write down your answers to these questions. Okay? Don't write them in the chat. Don't write your answers there. Write them somewhere else, maybe on a document, maybe on a piece of paper. Okay, so on question 1, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like pizza? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like pizza? And number 2, what's your all-time favourite pizza topping? Okay, to give you a moment to think. All right, now we are going to use the chat, but you're not going to write your answers. You're going to write the questions. Okay, so don't press send yet. So I'd like you to open the chat and write the questions that I asked, but do not send them yet. Okay, don't press enter, don't click the send button. Okay, so I'll give you a moment just to write those 2 questions down. I'm going to open the chat. I'll say hi to everyone. Yeah, I'll put the link into the certificate later on again. Okay, are you ready? Oh, people are pressing send. Okay, go. Let me have it. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much pizza? How much like pizza? Wow, what's the ultimate topic? You're even saying it better than I said it. That's fantastic. All right, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So here are the 2 questions that I asked. Thank you all so much. Sorry if you're, there you go. Great. Okay, so here are the 2 questions that I asked. I think most of you got this one perfect, so really well done. And then what's your all-time favourite pizza topping? Some of you said ultimate, which I really like. Some of you said favourite ever. Awesome. So these are different ways of expressing the same meaning, which are fabulous. And this is where the students can then compare what they wrote with my original. They might be right, they might say something slightly different, but the meaning's similar, or they might be wrong. So depending on the level of the learners, they might make some grammar mistakes, and you can go over that with them. They're starting to notice it themselves, so therefore taking ownership of that language. But then as teachers, we can highlight as well. So this student who wrote from 1 to 10, this student might notice, oh, that's how you say it, on a scale of. I'll remember that. I've noticed that. This student who missed out the auxiliary, yes, I remember do. Yes, I must remember to use do in present simple questions. This student, how much is it, a big amount or a small amount? So different students are gonna notice different things. And then here, this person, what's your favorite pizza of all time? Okay, you can use it as an adjective to describe favorite, etc. Okay, so different students will notice different things depending on how they reconstructed the sentence. So I love this activity. It's really zero prep. Question forms are notoriously difficult in English, so it's a great activity and one that I use a lot, a lot, especially when I'm covering and I don't have anything prepared. I'm just like jumping in. All right, the classic noticing reconstruction activity is dictogloss. So I'm sure you might have heard of this. If you haven't, I heartily recommend having a go at this in class. So our first step is to establish the meaning through comprehension check in this case, or just having the students summarize. So here is a headline of an article on the topic of pizza. And the task would be to predict. So I get the students to predict, okay, why is this restaurant charging £100 for a pizza? And those of you that don't live in the UK, £100 is a lot. It's probably about, well, these days, probably about 5 or 6 or 7 times more expensive than a pizza really should be. Okay, so we predict, and then the teacher reads the text aloud, and we will check. This story is actually from the news on Monday, so maybe you read it and it's familiar. But anyway, I'll read it out to you and check your predictions. Okay, and here are 3 options for why the restaurant might charge £100 for pizza. Okay, so a pizzeria is asking its customers to put their dough where their mouth is if they want to eat a Hawaiian, charging £100 for a ham and pineapple topped pizza. The owners and staff of Lupa Pizza in Norwich are so revolted by the Hawaiian that they have reluctantly added the topping to their delivery menu, but only with the eye-watering price tag. The menu description reads, yeah, for £100 you can have it. Order the champagne too. Go on, you monster. Okay, so then we might do a pair check and check the answers. So in this case, why is the restaurant charging £100? Well, it's to discourage people from buying it. Yeah, but also maybe as a publicity stunt, and it worked. Okay, so we do the comprehension check. Next, the teacher reads the text again at natural speed. So it's not a dictation. They haven't got time to write everything down. They just, you might train them to write down the important words, the content words. I train students to write on every other line so that there's room to add in the gaps. And you might read it once, you might read it twice. And now I actually did this. I got my phone to read this article out loud to me. And these were the notes that I made. Okay, and then the next time I added some more, and you can see highlighted here the bits that I added the second time. So I'm making notes, I'm using the lines in between, I'm trying to keep it all in the same order. And then, okay, so we've read it once or twice. You might get the students then to reconstruct. So they've got their notes. Remember, it's the listening, so they can't see it, they haven't read it, but they're recreating the full sentences using their notes. And I quite often put students in pairs so that they can pool their knowledge of form and they can use both their memories to create the full sentences. Okay, and you might end up with something like this. Then, so they've re-expressed the meaning, we compare it with the original, and we start to compare, we start to notice. And in the classroom, of course, the teacher's very useful at this stage. You might say, oh, okay, that means the same thing, but it's not quite as natural, or that means the same thing, but you've missed out a word, or whatever feedback the learners need. Teaching online, it's even better because the learners can share their screen and you can do communal correction. It's much easier than in a face-to-face classroom. Okay, so I start comparing, and then here's some of the differences that mine were. Pizza is asking it's for their dough. No, to put their dough where their mouth is. Okay, so I learned that colloquial expression. And then the teacher can add and focus in on whatever language they like. So I chose this text partly because of this construction. So we'd be looking at so adjective that. So in this case, they were so revolted by the Hawaiian that they said that they have reluctantly added it to their menu. And you can get the students to extend this. I was so surprised that I fell over. It was so dark that I crashed into a lamppost or whatever. But they might notice other things. So in class, you can be spontaneous. You might talk about imperatives. Okay, they're being used here in a sort of jokey way, and how we can use imperatives in that sense. There's also some compound adjectives in there with a hyphen, and we can look at how those are formed. And then I like that one, put your money, put your dough where your mouth is. So whatever sort of comes up for your learners, whatever they find interesting, whatever you find interesting can be a useful learning opportunity. So I am a big fan of Dictogloss, but there's lots of other ways you can use these activities. You can gamify it. I love this activity. I call it Word Wall, but it was originally based on a computer game called Storyboard. And this is just one of the chunks of that text, one of the paragraphs from that text. And all I have to do to prepare this activity is write, so this is my teacher's notes. I just copy the text and put each word in a separate cell of a table and number this. You can even do this with the automatic numbering. So it's really easy to prepare. I keep these secret, so I put them in a separate window if I'm teaching online, or have it on a piece of paper that's secret from the students. And they work in teams to guess the words. So team 1 is green, team 2 is red and purple. So if the word that they guess appears in the text once, then they get 1 point. If it appears multiple times, then they get 4 points, whatever. Okay, so team 1 go first, and they chose the word the. And the word the is there 4 times. So they're off to a really good start. Okay, then team 2 are red. They guessed in. Okay, so they got that once. Team 3 guessed 2. Team back to green, they guessed and, so etc. Then if the student if the team guesses and it's not there, then record it under their name, and we go. Oh, at a certain point in the game, I start awarding bonus points. So what they're doing here is they're looking, so here they've guessed the word by and they've guessed the number. So they've said by in the 13, great, that's correct, they get an extra point. And they're looking at grammar here. They're looking at, okay, they be revolted by something. So I'm rewarding them for sort of seeing collocation, seeing patterns, seeing grammar words in context. Even adults can get very competitive when they do this exercise. Okay, and we carry on with the game, blah, blah, blah. Let's fast forward a little bit. And then at the end of the game, you have something like this. You can declare the winner. So team 1 got 13 points, team 2, oh, wow, they got 19. And team 3 got 13. So team 2 are the winners. We can declare the winners. And then the same thing, you can look back, look at the collocations, look at the colloquial expressions, look at the grammar, the same sort of feedback. It's the same text, so the same sort of feedback to fill that gap that they've started to notice throughout the activity. So love that one. Works great with young learners, well, teens particularly. It's competitive, but it's challenging, and the students have to work together and guess their words. All right, what's the next one? Oh yeah, translation. So I did mention earlier that one of the ways to convey meaning is by using the learner's first language. Obviously, that works great in a monolingual setting. So the students can work together, and you might, if you're in a monolingual setting, you might speak their language as well. But it also works in a multilingual setting when you don't speak any of the languages of the learners, and maybe they don't speak each other's languages. It doesn't matter, okay? So the first thing we do is we give them a text. I've taken a sentence from my pizza article. It's not a sentence, sorry. I've taken a paragraph from my pizza article. And they translate it. Okay, now I used Google Translate, but they would use their brain. So I've translated it here into Spanish and into Turkish. Okay, then we take away the original. So we take away the English, and we're left with our L1 version. The students are, sorry, during this stage, okay, you are monitoring and helping them understand and helping them think of the meaning so that they can find the appropriate words in their language. So it's a very active, it's cognitively engaging stage to get the English receptively and then produce their first language. Okay, and then we take the English away and they translate it back into English. So yes, they're using their current understanding of how English works and their memory to an extent. Okay, and they might come up with something like this. Okay. Then the next step, we take our English and we compare it with the original, and we start the process of, oh, noticing, oh, that's what I said, but actually that's different. How's that different? Oh, that's a nice way of saying the same thing, etc. So we're making learners conscious of their errors, and so when they come to say that same thing again, hopefully they'll be like, I can say it this way. And we're making that process of learning, we're giving them ownership over this language, and we're giving them motivation, hopefully, to improve and to become more complex and have a greater range of language. Okay, so we're comparing. An extra way that I sometimes get my learners to focus or encourage more noticing is to get them to code their translation, their retranslation. If the words are exactly the same, I get them to underline. If they are different, but they express the same meaning, then green. If it's different, it has a different meaning, it's yellow. If there's something missing, we do a little arrow up, and then brackets for extra. This is really just a starting point for that extra feedback. At the end of the day, the teacher has to say this is correct, this isn't, this has the same meaning, this doesn't, but it just sort of encourages them along the way to that noticing. So if I code this text, it would look a bit like this. So the description on the menu, okay, it's different from menu description, but it's the same meaning. Yeah, yes, I've put that as a different meaning because it's more informal. As well, to, same meaning. Go ahead, maybe slightly different meaning from go on, etc. And that's the sort of thing you could discuss with the class. Okay, then we can extend what's come up. So if these sorts of activities you've got a bit of teaching experience, these sorts of activities you can sort of create on the spot, like, okay, so we've decided to focus on menu description. It's a compound noun, and it saves words. So rather than the description on the menu, we've got the menu description, or the type of the job would be the job title, the room for meetings, the meeting room, etc. So you can come up with these activities on the spot. You can quickly do a quick chat GPT, give me some activities or examples of this. So you can be quite spontaneous looking at this language, or prepare it ahead of time if that makes you nervous. And then the other thing here was you monster. I don't know, it's like a little mini construction here. I don't know if this is the right term, but like, you know, it's not, you wouldn't say she monster or we monster. It's a very particular sort of you devil, you cheeky devil, and you sausage. That's something I use with my 6-year-old relatively frequently. And it might be something that they've not come across before. And then there's a practice activity here. So can you think of an appropriate reply if somebody says, I'm ordering the Hawaiian? You monster. Oh, I've finished my homework. Oh, you star, you legend, etc. So these are extra things that if the students have noticed, you can sort of extend and give them extra practice. Or get them to come up with some activities for homework. That would be a good way to do it as well. All right, and then the last activity, we've got a couple of minutes, slightly different. It's basically a drill. So this is where you might notice something, but a bit more sort of in real time. And it's a disappearing drill. So again, this is quite an old school activity, but one that I really love because it helps facilitate that noticing. It helps embed language in memory. But as with anything, we need to establish the meaning first. Okay, so this text is a short little poem by Brian Bilston. And I might not use it in class, but I couldn't resist using it with you guys. So the first thing would be some comprehension questions. And the question is, do you agree with this poem in terms of the fact, in terms of the sentiment? So the underlying. So here's the poem. 30 days hath September, April, June and November. Unless a leap year is its fate, February hath 28. All the rest hath 3 days more, excepting January, which hath 6,184. Okay, so the learners would say, okay, no, January doesn't have that many days, but it feels like it does. So we're processing the literal meaning and the sort of figurative meaning of this little poem. And then everyone together. So as a teacher, you can get the students to read the poem. Then we get them to read it again, except this time they're sort of re-expressing it, but with a little bit of memory coming in, because we're erasing some of the key words. Okay. And in this case, I've taken out some of the vocabulary, so leap year, an article here, and so teaching or helping students become aware of how big numbers are formed with the and before the 10 digit. And then we keep going. You might just choose words at random, but ideally things where there is a collocation to notice, or a dependent preposition, or an auxiliary verb, or a particular structure. And then we repeat it again, and we repeat it again with even fewer words, and we repeat it again. And at the end, hopefully, they'll have memorized the whole thing. And memory does play a role in language teaching, however sort of old school that might be. I think having that, remembering certain patterns, is really helpful for fluency. It means that we have greater access to those chunks of language, and they're able to come out more fluently. All right, so that's it. Thank you for your attention.